Jeff,
Is this on?
I had,
Am I on?
Yeah, you're
I'm
on.
on now?
You're on, bud. You're on. I had actually approached him a few weeks ago about doing this. Jeff does a lot of study into creationism. That's correct.
A lot.
A lot.
I can't get out of my
And,
head.
come here, bro. Let me
sometimes.
fix your collar, man. Come here. I'm going to help you out, man.
Oh,
that's
good,
what
because you know it's going to be on video here.
That's what I'm here for.
Hey, I had to put on the sport coat so I look a little more professional like.
You look good, man. You look good.
Yeah.
But he does a great job in this, and I really feel like it's really important here in the last few weeks I've been praying about this, but even on Wednesday nights, we're starting to do some different things. One of the things we've been doing, of course, is we've been doing worship and prayer on Wednesdays, and we're going to continue doing that, but I'm going to break it up a little bit on Wednesdays. The first Wednesday of every month, we're going to continue doing that, and again, every Wednesday, we will start it with worship and prayer. But the second and third Wednesday, we will have a teaching. And we will have different people within the church that will be doing the teaching. I may do one periodically. But I know Brother Mitch, we had talked about him. He's actually going to teach on eschatology, on Revelation, some of the views that he has concerning that. And they will be different views than the ones that I gave. And that's important. That's one of the things we were talking about. Let me say this. I think a lot of times we're fearful because, well, what if this perspective is different than this perspective? That's craziness. Bill Johnson is one of my favorite pastors, and he said he intentionally invites people to speak from his pulpit that have different points of view, and that's just it's a sign of maturity. But I think we can all learn together. I think Brother Mitch said we're both right. Is that what you said? Yeah. And but when you have something inside of you, it doesn't need to be suppressed. It needs to have an opportunity. You need to have an opportunity to release that. And so, brother, I'm excited, and I really believe that people like Brother Mitch and other people that are here, even Jeff and others that may have things to share. I know, sitting over here with Jacob and Caitlin on Sunday nights, Sunday evenings, it's just been awesome watching this in this marriage class. It's giving people an opportunity to share and to talk, and it's really important. And so I want to start tapping more into that and start doing more home groups, more things of that nature. I know this year has been crazy with all this stuff, but I'm way over it. I don't know if I'm just over it. I don't even care anymore. You come in here, you don't even know what's going on because we just don't adhere to none of it because I just don't care. I'm just at that point. I'm over it. I'm done. So, hallelujah. Amen. I'm over it. So I really believe, yes, ma'am. Yes. No, you're good. You're good. Cool. Yeah. Amen. And then the last Wednesday of every month, I want to do something where we actually meet here on a Wednesday and then we go out. We used to do this, and I feel like it's important that we need to do this again. But it's called Pay It Forward, and so basically what we ask everyone to do is once a month, if you can donate $1, $5, or $10, $1, $5, or $10 a month each person. I think everybody can do that. And what we'll do is we'll collect that money, and at the end of the month, we will go out on the last Wednesday of every month, and we will find random people to just bless. It may be somebody at a gas station, maybe someone in a grocery store. And this is a good time of year to do this. It really is. And it will give you an opportunity to just minister to them, just love on them. And so we're going to do that as well, okay? And so every Wednesday will look different. I think when it gets redundant is when you start losing people. You lose the interest. So you don't ever know what it's going to look like, so my suggestion is come. Amen. So will y'all give Jeff a hand? We love you, buddy. We're excited, man.
Thank you, Pastor. I have to thank him for this opportunity. It's hard for a pastor to give up a Sunday morning, And we talked about whether to announce it or not. Yes, so we can get the word out. And then we thought, maybe we shouldn't. People might not show up. Jeff's talking. What's he talking about? Yes. Well, everybody, welcome to Biology 101. If you didn't sign up for Biology 101, I think there's still time. Cusada Baptist up the road, right? Oh my gosh, I have a lot. I'm also wanting to video this just because it might be a ministry opportunity to others, which is why I wanted to perhaps video it and give them a taste of what they might be getting. They might change their mind. I don't know. We'll see. If you haven't already, I did want to try this. I also wrote a website. Get on there if you haven't. I noticed there weren't very many people of you getting on here. It's your choice. There's a lot of material, and I think I'm going to see if that helps. Questions, rather than posing questions, I have a section there for asking questions. I wrote that part myself too, so somebody's got to get on there and ask me a question, preferably about creation. All right? Yeah. Hey, Mr. Speaker, I got a question. Like, when's Pastor Clint going to be back up there? All right, he'll be back up here soon. All right, but I got a lot to talk about. I'm going to talk fast. You have to listen fast because now there's even more slides I might have to blow through. Please forgive me if I go fast. I want to get this video out. We're going to record it, and then sometime some of this, if you want to, you can go back and hear some of this. I know we have a mixed audience. Some of you are really interested in this, and some of you aren't. And some of you are asking, like, why are we talking about this topic, huh? That's a valid question. Listen, my objectives here are to point to Christ. That is the first and foremost here, is to point to Christ. Understand this, that there are people that are having a hard time coming to Christ because of an intellectual barrier called evolution or age of the earth. And we can remove that intellectual barrier to bring people to Christ. I know this may not be good interest to you, but pay attention. Hey, I don't know if you could turn those lights down. That might help see. Actually, that better help for the video here. But yes, absolutely, to point to Christ. Consider this. What has Pastor Clint been talking about lately? The redemptive work of Christ. Okay, there are some Christians that actually say, well, maybe it's okay to merge with evolution. Maybe it's okay to merge that. But listen to what happens when you do that. You do not have a garden. You don't have Adam and Eve in a garden having a relationship with God before the fall. When he's sitting here preaching, this is very timely here because he's preaching the redemptive work of Christ. Well, what is redemption from? Just yesterday I was listening to Damon Thompson. He was also saying what Christ did was to redeem that relationship. It was far more than salvation. Do you remember he was talking about the last Christ, the last Adam? He took a penny out. He handed it to Kenny. This represents my last penny. If there's no first Christ, there's no last Christ. Evolution is an attack on who Christ is. That's why I say we're going to point to Christ. The other thing is I want to give you faith in the Word of God. The first 11 chapters of Genesis are under attack, and yes, you can have faith in those. The last thing I'll do is want to equip, because we know that there are other people that need to hear this message. I know I'm going to blow through this fast. Try to get what you can, and if you can, then go back and read and research some of this for yourself. All right, here are some of the challenges that people have. I was going to go through these, but for the sake of time, let me just throw these up here. Point out a couple things. Yes, there is abundant evidence for evolution, but you just wait on that one. Wait on that one. And you know what? It's good to be honest to our young people. Too many young people have been told there's no evidence, and then they go up and they see there is, and they have resentment. Don't do that. Plus, you might intrigue people. They say, what, there is? Absolutely. Hang with me. 98% of scientists accept evolution. That's a challenge for people. It was for me. That's going to be my very last slide, so you can pay attention. When you see that slide go up, I'm almost done here, just to give you a little hope for the light at the end of this tunnel here, okay? And then I do want to get back and talk about that merging of the two. All right? Well, here's what we do in the face of all these. We focus on science, scripture, science, and supplication or prayer. I think everybody here's got the scripture part. Science. I have some good news for you. I would not have made this statement years ago. Today, science is on our side. I really have seen that. I have studied this since the 90s. And back in the 90s, I was like, I had to say, okay, I have scripture. That's all I had. Today, we have these three. And when I say supplication, I mean this prayer. And I want you to pray this prayer. God, change me if I'm wrong. If evolution is true, change me. Go ahead. Seriously. I have prayed this prayer a lot. And when I meet theistic evolutionists, I try to get them to pray the other way. And they don't. But I tell you what, there's some confidence. These three will yield to biblical creation, will point you to biblical creation, otherwise known as young earth creation, a more intellectually satisfying worldview. That's an interesting statement I just made. Is that the point? No, really just the point is faith. But this is the bonus. It's a bonus that it really is. It is a more intellectually satisfying worldview. And now you're asking, well, what's a worldview? Thank you. Glad you asked. All right. A worldview is our perception of reality. Everyone has a worldview. And there's some well-defined ones. Atheism is a worldview. Different religions, Buddhism, Christianity, these are worldviews. There's a worldview called naturalism. Naturalism is the worldview that says, okay, there may be a spiritual world, but we will only consider the natural world. Okay, well, whatever your world is, you got some questions you need to answer, all right? As Ricky Ricardo would say, you got some splaining to do. You see who's old enough to know that reference. So, hey, we had a young kid that actually knew that reference. Yeah, well, you know what you're going to have to explain? Things like the origin of the universe, the origin of life. This is a huge problem, by the way. The origin and uniqueness of humans. These are just some of the things that your worldview has to explain. The cosmos is full of some very complex things. None more complex than these entities right here. Bizarre. These are the most unique creatures. I tell you what, they wear clothing. Who told them they were naked? Right? Pam, okay, I gotta tell you, just yesterday, Pam comes up and she's reading the book of Genesis and reads the account of Adam and Eve sewing fig leaves and together, and she says that was the first time a woman ever asked, does this make me look fat? Yeah. I thought, that's the first time a man ever said, huh? What do you mean? All right, so these are so unique. Not only that, nice clothing too. I mean, look at this guy, he's wearing a suit like he's trying to impress people, huh? Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that. All right, folks, if you're on my website, you'll see a bunch of things. We're not going to go over these, but there is uniqueness that your worldview has to explain. Evolution, these are things that evolution has a hard time explaining. The Bible explains very well, which leads us to the topic, how do you evaluate a worldview? A couple things. One is multiple competing hypotheses. As Christians, we have two, biblical creation and evolution, and we compare these two. All right, some people only have one, but we have two to compare to. Another thing is inference to the best explanation. All right, some people I know that they say creation is unscientific. Well, whether it is or not, how about the inference to the best explanation? Or I like this one right here. I'm going to refer to this one a lot. How about the best explanatory power, internal consistency? The uniqueness of humans, that's a good one right there, because you say, does your worldview explain this as well as ours? How's your explanatory power of this? Internal consistency, we can evaluate theirs. Okay, well, this is your worldview. Let's evaluate it internally and see what inconsistencies we have. And not whether they have them, how many. Because guess what? Good and bad news here. Bad news is that no worldview is perfect. All are incomplete. All have some kind of cost, something about it that trade-offs. Does that mean the biblical worldview is not perfect? Yes, I did say that, but there's some good news in that. That is supported scripturally. There's lots of scriptures that can support the fact that even our worldview is not perfect. I'm going to give you one. In fact, I'm going to give you just three words. If you knew. Jesus was talking to the woman at the well. Think about this. He's the creator of the universe talking to a woman who doesn't know what's going on. And he's in this middle of his conversation, he drops these three words. If you knew who I am. When he uttered, these are the most compelling three words of the Bible to me. I got hung up on these words for a long time. Because by saying that, he implies two things. One, that she did not know. But two, that she could. All right? God is unknown but knowable. Hidden yet findable. Undiscovered yet discoverable. The fact, remember how I said a worldview should be evaluated internal consistency? It is internally consistent within the biblical worldview to say that the biblical worldview is incomplete. Go watch the video if you catch that, okay? All right? That is a part of our worldview. All right? I know people will say to us, but creationism is unscientific. And I say, thank you. You just evaluated, what am I saying? You just validated our worldview by saying that. Part of it is scientific. We're looking through microscopes. We're looking through telescopes. But part of it is God saying, you've given the capacity to look through microscopes and telescopes, but you haven't given full knowledge, and that gap is faith. There is a part of faith, but guess what? All the worldviews have faith. Now, if we're going to evaluate our worldview properly, we need to evaluate all the data that comes in. We have to be able to look at fossils. We have to be able to look at DNA. We have to be able to look at the fact that 98% of scientists, that's data. But you know what else is data? Are things like the uniqueness of humans. Or how about this one, the Bible? The Bible is data. Whether they want to accept it or not, we accept it. They can accept it or not. The Bible is data. You know what else is? What we just saw this morning, God encounters. What Alita just shared, And I sat there and thought, that's exactly, God encounters. And I know some people will say, well, cannot be evaluated externally. No, but there's a lot of people that have God encounters, far more than that 98% of scientists. And at an individual basis, that's part of you're evaluating everything. We as creationists can evaluate everything. And when we do, we end up with a better explanation for everything. Who's got their phone out? This is on your slides. Go read it yourself. Like, try a little advertisement. Go read that. It's on there because I don't want to read all that. Okay, last thing about worldviews. It's good to understand a worldview when you're listening to somebody else, when you're listening to evolutionists talk. All right? A worldview is like a lens which we see data. We see fossils. They look at it through their worldview, naturalism. We see it through our worldview. Okay, formations like the Grand Canyon, these are formations problems that they must solve, they're going to solve them through their worldview. Well, slow and gradual, took a long time. We see it we see Noah's flood. We're going to talk about this next week, but we see a flood, we see it carved out quickly. Our worldview shapes that perception. Now, what I want to do, if you remember at the beginning, I said we have challenges. Some of the challenges are evolutionary articles that we see. So hang with me. What we're going to do is show you a couple of these and then how to handle them. I want to educate. I want to give you skills to help you when you see these articles, okay? All right, here, real simple. Fox News, humans are still rapidly evolving. And they say, this study addressed the question, are humans evolving? And the answer is absolutely. Or how about this one? Everybody say Hawaiian crickets. Yes, this is about Hawaiian crickets that are actually evolving. We're actually seeing evolution happen. Folks, in fact, this even comes with a warning. Do not tell your creationist friends this news or you're going to have to watch their heads explode from cognitive dissonance. We're going to have to move on. Yeah. How about this? You're flipping through the channel and you see National Geographic discussing the out of Africa model. All right, so apparently the early hominids began in Africa and they migrated across the continent of Asia. That's how they talk, by the way. I know, across the continent of Asia. What is this? How do we deal with these? I have one word for you. I have one word that's going to help you. Everybody memorize this word, narratives. What are narratives? Stories within a worldview. I'm looking for confused looks. Any confused? I'm not getting enough confused looks. I was hoping for some confused looks. Why? Maybe I spelled it wrong? All right, part of it was to see if you're paying attention. Part of it is it makes your brain engage a little bit, Yes, there is a downside to spelling a word wrong on your slides, though, because right now as I'm talking, there are people here that aren't paying attention a word to what I'm saying, right? You know the ones. They're like, it's spelled wrong, I can't hear you at all. Yes. All right, well, let's get them out of their misery here. Narratives. How's that better? Are you back? Are we all back with me now? All right. It's just stories within a worldview. Okay, so quiz. We're going to have a quiz, one question. The answer is narratives. All right? Let's go back to our show. We're watching our show about the migration of man across the continent. All right, what is this? This is a narrative. Yes. I was going to have to go back to the slide if you didn't say it, all right? It's simply a narrative. Okay, they found some fossils here, all right? You know, they found a quarter of the world around, they found a fragment of a fossil. Migration across, kind of, yeah, that's, wow. Well, I tell you, it's fabulous use of colors here. I love what they've done with this thing here. It's a story. Now, narratives are not a bad thing. We have them too. But now what I wanted you to do is see, okay, maybe when I see something, do I have to be intimidated by it? Not necessarily, especially when you look at this one here. The origin of life is a huge problem for evolutionists. Oh, but guess what? Scientists have determined approximately when it happened, and they even got a picture of it happening. They say it's down in deep sea vents is where it happened. Wow, they got a picture of it too. Yes, you know what I realized with this one? Sometimes their narrative is nothing but their best guess, or what I would call their least worst narrative. You'd be surprised. I used to be intimidated every time I just see the word evolution pop up in a title. I'm like, oh gosh, they're really figuring out a lot. Today, I love reading evolution because I realized they are trying, bless their hearts. They're just trying, you know. But you know what's really fun is this word right here. Scientists have determined. Well, guess what, folks? There is a difference between scientists say and science says. Let that sink in for just a moment. What do you mean by that? Let's talk about the word scientists say. All right, there's a term for it. It's called scientific consensus, which just means that most scientists agree on cholesterol is bad for you. No, cholesterol is good for you. Okay, that's just what scientific consensus means. Most scientists, the year is 2020, most scientists agree that the earth moves around the sun. All right? All right, well, wait a second. No, the sun moves around the earth. What year is it? 1500. So apparently the calendar on the wall dictates what scientists say. All right? Well, listen, back then in 1500s, this was it. This was the model. That's what scientists say. But there's a few brave people, like this man right here, Galileo. He knows what scientists are saying in his ear, but he knows what he's seeing through his telescope. He had to make a choice, and it was a difficult one back then, but he had to make a choice. And what this is an example of placing science, what science is telling us. And by the way, it's better to say science informs, especially when you're dealing with the distant past. Science really doesn't say. It just informs, and we have to make our best understanding of what was happening here, okay? Today, creation scientists, we know what they're hearing for the 98% of scientists, but they're looking through microscopes, they're looking through telescopes, and they're saying no. Listen, all scientific revolutions started small. So maybe there's a difference between which scientists say, the creation scientists or the scientists whose dominant worldview is naturalism. Naturalism is a philosophical attitude that says only natural causes can be considered. That's their attitude. So basically what they're saying is this: God gets benched for being unscientific. He doesn't get a play on the field. And yet, we're supposed to say 98% of scientists are, okay, well, let's bow down to what they say, okay? You know, this brings up a topic. Define science. I could spend a half hour on this topic. I did y'all a favor. I cut all my slides, and I reduced it down to 3 words. Science is a tool. Let's all say these 3 words. Science is a tool. I was going to see if you got that third word. Oh, I'm sorry. 4 words. Who's paying attention here? All right? Trying to see. It's simply a tool. When somebody say it's the end-all and be-all, no, science is simply a tool. But look at this. Just like the Bible, scientific evidence is interpreted by fallen man, especially historical ones where we weren't there to see what happened. Especially when we go out in the universe and we can't really test it. We're making interpretations of what it is, and it can be interpreted in many different. There's some stuff that's very open to interpretation. Fallen man is interpreting these things. Now, I know some of you might ask the question then, can we trust science? Scientists, if we can't trust them about evolution, can we trust them about medicine? Sometimes that question comes up, and we say, absolutely we can. Yes. Why? Because there is a difference between historical science, looking at the past, and operational science that says, look, this is testable, observable, repeatable. Creation scientists are doing this. Why? Because we know the difference between the two. All right? We'll do the research in medicine. All right? But this is just about the past, and it's open to interpretation. All right? Leads me to my next slide. I'm thinking, let's see I'm just seeing who's paying attention. Have I lost anybody yet? Now's a good time to kind of rope in those that I got lost. All right, let's do this. I know it's been a lot, little break. All right, everybody picture yourself on the beach. Do this with me. All right, little breath, deep breath. Look at the pretty, because you appreciate beauty, which is one of the things about humans. You appreciate the beauty. All right, and we look at the pretty butterfly, and then we ask ourselves, where on earth did that come from? All right, break's over, folks, okay? We got to get to evolution. I haven't even gotten to it yet, all right? How did worms reproducing into worms change from worms producing caterpillars? That is a huge problem, all right? Where did donkeys come from? That's another interesting question. All right, I want you all to think, what does this have to do with evolution? want you to try to think that one over. We'll come back to that one. All right, finally, we get to talk about evolution. How did this come about? All the variety of life on earth that we see. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go right to the summary because I know I'm going to lose a lot of you here. So for those of you that need to hear it, this is my summary. It's on my slide. Anybody getting up to my website? All right, that's all right. All right. Let's go here then. Pay attention. I don't want to cover all these right now, cover all of them. I do want to cover this first one. Evidence for evolution exists because the creation model is true. What an interest. Well, as I studied evolution, the more I studied, like I said, natural selection, God made that, and genetic variety, speciation. These things are all part of the creation model. And I'm realizing here, wait a minute. All that abundant evidence for evolution, that's there because the creation model is true. It was very revealing. So keep that in mind. We'll go through all these later if I have time and how we're doing here. Okay, I do have a few definitions. They're on the website. I don't want to spend time on these, so I'm sorry but try to grasp some of these. A big one is natural selection. Okay, this is where we get into the real technical. Okay, it's going to get real technical. Hang with me. All right, strap in. Whenever you see the word natural selection, think survival of the fittest. I think everybody has heard the phrase survival of the fittest, okay? We're going for clarity, not technical accuracy when I use that term. But think natural selection. These are ones I think they're going to come out as we're talking here. Okay, so by the way, these are a part of the creation model. Okay, now we get to talk about evolution. Almost. Well, turns out we actually have to define evolution. Let me tell you why we have to do this. As you're reading articles, you would be surprised at how many times you're reading an evolutionary article and you're reading this and going, that's not evolution. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, it's not their version of evolution. Well, listen, evolution just means change over time. Well, creationists have change over time. I've heard it say change in allele frequencies over time. Well, that's part of the creation model. So what do you mean? So it turns out that what you have to do is to separate their version. Now, I haven't used the phrase. I'm going to give you a phrase later. Right now, I'm just going to call it their evolution, okay? But yeah, we have evolution change over time in ours. Okay, there are two categories I want to cover, and this is where it gets real technical, okay? If you can hang with me through these, you're doing well, okay? I realize that there are two categories of things that you can say, wait, no, that's not, all right? Let's go over the first one. First, for example, I got to tell you this. My brother sent me this video, a video that says, we've been evolving at an accelerated rate, and it lists a couple examples, and one of them is that, guess what? We are getting taller. Oh, wow, I guess evolution is true. We are getting tall. Folks, there are genes for shortness and there are genes for tallness. You know, you average them, you're going to get an average. But if the genes, okay, folks, there's a lot of variety in humans. A lot of variety is things like hair color, skin color, eye color. And this variety can come in one generation, proven by the fact that these two are twins. Born the same day. The same mom and dad, right? It shows you that variety, there's God made a lot of variety, and it can come out in one generation. By the way, I personally find it odd that we would treat either of these two differently based upon the color of their eyes, maybe, hair, something, right? Okay, so get this. If we were done a study and they said we found them with more red hair than brown hair, what is that telling us? Okay, it's kind of like this. We did a study, and out on the road, we found that there were more red cars, and over time that there were more white cars. What is that? Well, it's evolving. It's evolving to the customer preference. Let's say customers now prefer white cars, and we noticed that the white cars, watch this, okay, I'm going to do this, okay? The red cars went down in preference, and now we saw that. And then the white cars, now that changed, and now we saw more white cars, okay? There's one point here to understand. Red cars already existed. White cars already existed. Do you understand that? It's a real simple concept, but there's not creating anything new. Okay, the same with rabbits, okay? God created rabbits with various different colors. Well, if these rabbits the population moved into a more desert-like region, we say, well, we notice that there's more of these than these have changed. It's a shift. Oh. And then those rabbits moved to a more forest environment. And then we saw less of those and we saw more of these. Oh. Listen, I had 2 words I want you to memorize today. The first one was what? Narratives. The second word I want you to memorize is this word right here. Okay. In fact, I'm going to make you say it. We're all going to say this word on the... I'm so cruel. I know. All right. Fine. Let's say this word together. Adaptation. All right? What is that? It's simply natural selection acting on pre-existing. Okay, so now you're equipped with adaptation. All right? You made it through. I know you're like, I shouldn't have came this morning. No, but if you're hanging with me, adaptation is actually a simple concept. Okay? So now we come back to our definition. Okay, so now we're going back to define evolution. So one thing is that when you're watching, when you're reading a show, when you're reading an article, and if you scan through and if you don't see the word mutation, then you know it's just adaptation. So of all their examples of evolution that you've seen over the years, there's a category that you can say, okay, that's not their evolution, all right? There's another one. Hang with me here, all right? Warning, you might hear words like beneficial mutation, selective advantage, I might say it, I might not, depending on if I remember to, devolution or reductive evolution, okay? This is the most technical part of my talk. If you make it through this one, you get the certificate, all right? I had one person laugh, he was the only one that would care. Yes, the certificate at the end. All right, here we go. Are we ready? I know. Did you have caffeine? All right, first we have to review. If you've been through school, you have learned neo-Darwinism. Look, I'm going for clarity, not accuracy here, okay? Darwinism is the method of mutation and natural selection. So in the past, we said, hey, those already existed. The genes for the hair color and the hairs already existed. How do you get the new information? Well, simply by mutation. You'll understand that mutations get passed on from one generation to the next. Those are copy mistakes. Well, most mutations are bad. Sure, but every now and then a good mutation comes along, we call it, and then natural selection picks it up and said, hey, this is really good, let's keep it. Okay? We call these, so if a mutation helped in survival, it's called a beneficial mutation. Okay? I didn't use selective advantage. Okay, so if a mutation comes along and it helps, it has a selective advantage there. I almost forgot to slip the word in there. That is called a beneficial mutation. Okay, this was just review. This is standard neo-Darwinism. Here's the catch. If you can follow this, this is really simple to understand. We'll get back to how many, beneficial mutations are the result of genetic damage or loss that did help in a specific situation. Sometimes it helps to lose things, get rid of things. Okay, if you're on a ship and everybody's like tearing stuff off and throwing it overboard, hey, we could have used that, and hey, we needed that, okay? But there might be a reason, right? Hey, we need to survive. Okay, so sometimes the concept is simple. In some situations, it's good to get rid of stuff, okay? Well, here's an example, beetles. All right. Oh, by the way, I have to give you the term. Those are, as I said, the term is devolution or reductive evolution, or think backwards evolution. Okay. So let's give you an example, and one is beetles. Okay. We know on a certain continent there were beetles. Most had wings. They noticed in the population there were a few that didn't. They were mutants. They did not have wings. They lost wings. Okay. But on an island, a very windy island, they noticed that there were more that did not have wings on this very windy island. And we realized that on a high wind, the ones with wings got swept out to sea. So the mutation, although it's not really good, in one little situation, for the ones on the island, it did help them. Okay? The ones on the island. So every now and look, there's enough about life that every now and then something comes along that does help in a specific situation, okay? I know this one's kind of a complex concept. It's really simple. Kind of like the guys on the ship who, we like to build ships. Hey, we build ships, we come up with new stuff. Here's a new stuff, it's pretty heavy, let's bring it on, okay? We know how to build ships. And most of the ships are gonna keep them, but gosh, this one case, we gotta get rid of this thing because we just need to survive, okay? God created life with a lot of attributes about life. Every now and then you're in one situation where you say, hey, we're okay, we're better off without this thing right here, okay? That is referred to as it's a beneficial mutation, but it's a loss, and so we put it in the category of devolution, okay? So in devolution, there's a couple examples. One is that when beetles on a windy island, okay, that lost their mutation, and they'll actually use it and say, look, here's an example. What do we do with that example? No, we're going to cross that one out. Okay? Do you understand why we're crossing out this example? It doesn't tell us where wings came from. Okay? It just says every now and then you happen to find something that helps you out. A couple others. Y'all remember the Hawaiian crickets? Yeah, Hawaiian crickets. Guess what? It was devolution. You know what's funny about that one is they're so desperate for examples that they're throwing these out, saying, here's an example. And we look at it and go, oh, no, not quite. Have you ever heard of antibiotic resistance as an example for evolution? Guess what? It is devolution, actually. So here's 3 that we tossed out, all right? That was in the category of devolution. So now we get back. How'd we do? That was the tough part, all right? If you didn't catch that, go back and watch the video because it's a very, very important concept. Okay, by the way, if you want to read this book also, excellent book on the topic. Okay, getting back to defining evolution, which, by the way, except for these 2, okay? So they're going to give us examples, and we're going to say, no, if it's not these. Then you want to really say, well, what do you mean? It's really good to ask, tie them down sometimes when you're talking and say, there's 2 things that really highlight what's really different between creation and evolution. There's a lot that's overlapped, okay? The ones I just gave you are a part of the creation model. The fact that mutations exist and sometimes have it, that's a part of the creation model. What do you really mean? Well, for starters, those twins have a distant cousin, granted rather distant cousin, called cabbage. And yes, and bumblebees, okay? It's called the tree of life. We're all connected by a tree of life. Not only that, the link between us and cabbage is tiny little, they can't have any jumps. It's like, well, maybe it comes here and then kind of jumps. Well, according to theirs, they can only have small changes. So apparently between a human and a cabbage is very tiny little changes, and everyone has to work, okay? That's called the tree of life, okay? So that's one aspect. The other thing that's unique about their version of evolution, let me give you a visual. All right, so we take ocean worms, and over time, we turn them into eagles, right? Or how about this one? We take microbes, okay, like bacteria. Can everybody see let me put an arrow by it, okay. Can everybody see the bacteria now? Okay, yeah, think of a bacteria. A little microbe. Okay, microorganisms. So we take microorganisms and we observe them over time, and we notice that over time they turn into microbiologists. Yeah, I know. I could stay on this slide for a while and just so many questions start coming up with this. Okay, everybody say microbes to man evolution. Okay, we're going to get that because that's the phrase I want you as a good visual to say. That's what they're talking about. Folks, listen, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, okay? Think about this also. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. There's a lot that's got to happen here, and let me tell you what, there's a lot of broken links on this. So, okay, now, finally, we're defining evolution. It's tree of life, and it is microbes to man evolution. Please don't be offended, men, that you're called this. You'll get over it, okay? Okay, so here's why it's important to remember this phrase. Because when you're talking to somebody and they're, say, what you mean? So you mean Is what we're talking about, you believe that? You believe microbes to man, bacteria to bacteriologists, worms to women. There, women, you're included too here, okay? That's what you're talking about. So as you're reading articles, it's good to nail this down, okay? Think upward evolution. And this is a good one because we're going to compare with creation in just a minute. This is upward. This is starting with very little, creating a lot. Okay, remember that one. Keep that one in mind. And as we said, so the following are not microbes of man evolution: adaptation and beneficial mutations that are actually devolution. Here's something amazing, okay? That book that I showed you, we have been developing some great technology to be able to map genomes and actually track what's going on with evolution. And we're getting better and better at that. And you know what's absolutely amazing about this? I used to say, if you were to ask how many, I used to say that some of them are just devolution. Of all the examples they gave, I used to say some of them. And then I got to many of them. And then I got to most of them. And then as of Wednesday this past week, I watched a video that say, okay, I bumped that to virtually all. Some of you who really get evolution, you just realize, if you really get what's going on here, evolution's got a serious problem here, okay? And I know I said virtual. Let me give you the video I was watching. I was just watching this, and it's on, I put the link on the website if you want to watch it yourself. Dr. Sanford, he was interviewing Dr. Sanford. Amazing. You know, he's a creationist. He used to be an evolutionist, all right? Very smart guy. And when he said this Wednesday, as I was listening, I thought, wow. So there are beneficial mutations, but in every case I'm aware of, all beneficial mutations involve reductive evolution. Now we're careful because we think, hey, you know, every squirrel gets lucky and finds a nut, right? So, you know, they may come up with some, and that's okay. But the thought is, the more we're finding our backwards evolution, two things are happening here. One, that's one less example for them. Two, things are going the wrong way. That's what the science is saying. Remember the picture of the worm to an eagle? The data is saying, if anything, maybe the eagle is going down to the worm. We still don't even think that would happen. Folks, that's what the data is saying. I want to make a big claim right here. I could very confidently say this, that of all the evolutionary articles that you've ever come across, think of over the years. I know you haven't remembered them. I feel very confident to say that of all the ones that you read about, none of them justify molecules to man evolution. And I know that's a very bold statement. And if you want to come up and challenge me on that, I'll talk to you about why. Part of it is because the public only gets these, and the very few, I went and studied the very few that aren't. They're such tiny examples, and we're finding more and more of those aren't. Bold statement, mate, I know. All right, let's talk about creation. Then we're going to compare the two. All right? I'll do this quickly because I know we've been talking a lot here. But it is important to know the creation model, okay? You know evolution, creation model says this: life grouped by kinds. Okay? We have trees, multiple trees, the orchard. He made the bear kind, he made the horse kind, he made the cat kind, the dog kind. Okay? From the original horse, there was a branching out. So yes, we believe in change over time. We believe in speciation. That's part of the creation model. All right? Abundant variety. God made animals with a bunch of variety built in. But there's a limit to it. There's a lot of variety in cats. But do all you want, there'll only be cats. There's a lot of variety in dogs. Man, we're doing everything we can to find all kinds of dogs best we can, yeah, but guess what? As much as you do, you're only going to get dogs. And the last one is this, a very important one: decay and loss over time. The Bible says that the creation was subject to decay. This is supported scientifically. This is a really big problem. Okay, so now we're going to think downward evolution, okay? Evolution was upward evolution. This is more, it was like spreading out and losing. Here's a good visual. Does everybody understand the concept of a prism? A prism creates all these colors. Look, it made all these colors, right? No, it didn't make the colors. Okay, what really happens is white light is the combination of all these colors. As it passes through, it splits them out. So when you see yellow, that's not yellow being created. That's non-yellow being removed. Does you understand that concept? It's a splitting out and it's a spreading. God created an original canine, and it was abundant to begin with. But as they spread, or as rabbits spread throughout the world, you start getting speciation. You start seeing a little bit of that variety. And in fact, if you get one variety that stays long enough and you start pure breeding dogs, eventually you're going to have a very unique dog, but you can't go back. Okay, there's loss. As spreading out, loss is occurring. Not only is loss occurring, mutations are occurring, okay? The poodles, the bulldogs. I heard this one creation say, God did not make poodles. He did not make poodles, okay? He made an original canine, and over time, some mutations build up, and kind of an interesting concept. He did not originally make poodles or bulldogs, okay? They're shorter legs, they can barely breathe. There's some dogs that wouldn't survive well out, okay? But we keep them alive because we like them, okay? That's loss over time. Yes, there's variety, but that's loss over time. It also helps explain some really unique things like, why are there some animals that seem very well adapted to just this niche? Freshwater, saltwater fish, or koalas are really adapted to this environment. So they evolved right there. The creation model says, wait a minute, that's their diet that they eat best. Maybe what it was before they could have had a larger diet, but they got isolated in this environment and they lost ability. Does that make sense? Evolution says, it sit there and it evolved to this niche. Look at it, it's so adapted to this niche. If you took it somewhere else, it couldn't survive well. The creation model says they originally had a lot. They sit in one place long enough. That's speciation going on. That's genetic loss. That's downward over time. Okay, now we can talk about the overlap between evolution and creation. And this slide is what's really going to sum this up. And if you all can't read it, it's because you didn't bring your phone up, because I have this image on my phone, on your phone, on the website here, okay? At this point, if you're not there, okay, go back later, and I'll leave it up there. But the important thing isn't so much what's on here. I'll just read a few: adaptation, natural selection, speciation, okay? What I put on this side is what definitely is unique to just creation model. And I put on this side what is definitely unique to just evolution, because it's important when we look at it this way, say, okay, these are separate, these are common, okay? So what we can do now is it helps us evaluate a little bit better about creation and evolution when I pose it this way. Do you remember I said that there's one way to evaluate worldviews are two things: explanatory power, internal consistency, okay? So we can evaluate this one or two ways. We could focus on the things that are common, that both sides can account for some way, and look at explanatory power. Which one of these two explains the common stuff better? Or we could take another approach. We could look at this stuff specifically and say, are there any scientific challenges here, any inconsistencies scientifically with that? And then we could look at inconsistencies scientifically with that. Two different approaches. Both point to the same answer right here, okay? This is the answer, because I really, as I've looked at all these and I've studied all these, I'm like, each one of these, for the majority, if I looked at these collectively, the creation model better explains some of this stuff. There is some stuff in here that's really hard for them to explain. Then when I look at their scientifically, I'm seeing there's a lot of weak support scientifically here. That chain, remember, the chain is only strong as its weakest link, and there's some big ones there. The tree of life is a real problem for them, all right? I look at this scientifically, and I say, what scientific challenges are here? Almost none, okay? The answer is pretty darn obvious for us as creationists when we present it this way. All right, you've done great, all right? You've all done great. I almost want to finish up, but let me throw out one last silver bullet. Anybody interested in a silver bullet? All right, you're talking to your evolutionist friends, all right? I got one last one here. I'll make it quick. It's one slide. This one silver bullet. The silver bullet is the first cell. Yes, that is a big one, all right? Now, you have to know how to use the silver bullet right. So let me explain this to you, okay? Understand the term is abiogenesis, which really means the first cell, or chemical evolution, okay? Everybody say chemical evolution. And you don't even have to say it like an evolutionist would, okay? All right? Chemical evolution, it's important. That's important because we're going to get back to why it's important to use that term, okay? The first thing you need to know is it is ridiculous to believe in, and it's getting worse. I just summed it up. Technically speaking, I just summed up the whole problem. It is getting worse, okay? I have a prediction, the year is 2020. Over this next decade, they're going to find even more problems with this, especially as they try to realize how difficult it is to build nanomachines, okay? That's what's going to happen in the 20s, okay? This problem is going to get worse, all right? Now, when you're talking to your evolutionists about this, it's important to understand that it is separate from biological evolution. Everybody say it's separate. All right. Important for two reasons. Well, one, they can't rely on the neo-Darwinian process of mutation and natural selection. That, at least it's a process. At least it says, okay, I started with this, and then I kind of improve a little bit in steps. The process and we called that microbes to man. This process is called molecules to microbes, meaning I just have a bunch of chemical molecules sitting around, and they came together to a cell. Well, is there a slow process? There's no gradual process. It has to happen all at once, okay? The second reason why it's important to keep these separate is because when you talk to them, when pressed, evolution's biggest rebuttal is, get this, yes, but did you know that it's separate from biological evolution? That's what they say. It's kind of funny that seems to be their biggest rebuttal, as if you didn't know that and they just got something on you. That's why I say make sure you know. You know what's fun? Go into a forum and drop that little, hey, evolutionists, and make sure you use the term evolutionists. You have a real problem with abiogenesis, and then sit back and see how many of that responses you get, and you say, that's your response, okay? You know, I got to say this. Next week we're going to talk about age of the earth. They have an answer for every challenge. They really do. There's some funny, next week you're going to go, that's your answer? That is bizarre, but hey, it's an answer. They have an answer to everything. This is the only one where I've really said they really don't have an answer. Their answer is, well, we just haven't found the answer yet. That really is their answer. And they seem to be very satisfied with that answer. So anyway, just a little, there's your silver bullet. Okay? All right, the summary. Okay, I made it to the summary. I talked about this first one is really good. There's a lot of overlap. It's there because because the creation model is true. The tree of life, you can go, if you want to, go research it. It is a huge problem for them. I might put on my website a discussion about that. The neo-Darwinian process is inadequate. Natural selection is too weak. Natural selection, you think it's the carving. It carves. It's weak, okay? Genetic drift is a bigger problem. If you really want some technicality here, study genetic drift. Natural selection is too weak to pick up small benefits. It's too weak to get rid of bad benefits. That's one of the challenges. I know this is technical, but I'm putting this on video. Too much devolution, as we just talked about. I think we went over that enough. Maybe you can get that one. Yes, too much. In fact, there's so much that it says, hey, every time we get more of a topic of devolution, you lost the good example and you gained a counter example. Did you get that? Was I said that earlier? The more the beneficial mutations are flipping over to devolution, you're losing good examples and you're gaining stuff that's going the wrong way. It's going the wrong way here. Too many hurdles. The chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and there are weak links here. And then the last one, too much genetic degradation. That video about that Dr. Sanford quote, he wrote a book called Genetic Entropy. Things are getting worse, okay? Every generation, we're seeing degradation going on. And he made a statement that all population geneticists, human population geneticists, they know it. They know that things are getting worse. So that leads me to this one right here. Does anybody figure out what my what your guess is on what does this have to do with evolution? Well, it's really pretty simple. There's a lot of baggage here. Okay? There's a lot of baggage going on here. All right, on my website is a video. I really encourage you to watch this video. That video, there's another one. It ties to human uniqueness rather well. And so I want you to try to go watch those. But I want to finish with the topics of theistic evolution. Last two topics I have here that I really want to address. And that is, wait a minute, well, what do we do with the people that, the fact that there's this merging of the two, okay? They call it theistic evolution. They start calling it evolutionary creationism. I call it hasty marriage or a compromise. That's what I call it. What do I mean by hasty marriage? I've even heard others call it a hasty marriage. Back in the 90s, when I first started studying it, that was when a lot of theistic evolution started taking hold. And there was one organization that was given millions of dollars to peddle theistic evolution. And it really started growing back then. Well, back then, I was really interested and I studied it, but I was like, wow, it was tough. But I knew better. I thought, you know what, I'm going to hold out. And what I would have said to them back then, you should have held out. Because today, it's absurd. I know it's my personal opinion, but it's absurd. But what's really absurd is some of the theology, okay? We say, and God saw that it was good. Well, that was before the fall. That's a problem. No Adam and Eve, or maybe an Adam and Eve that lived long ago and mated with non-humans. That's a really complicated concept, but that's some of the baggage, the theological baggage that you're taking here. Or how about or some kind of confusing fall of man? I mean, really no fall of man. There was no Garden of Eden with God having a relationship with man that got taken away, that needed to be restored. Bad theology going on here, a confusing last Adam of Christ then. We're sitting here talking about the last Adam. Well, it really wasn't, The first 11 chapters have to be ignored, and then all of the age problems that we're going to talk about next week. I have to say, this is how I see theistic evolution. There's a whole bunch of scientific baggage, and there's a whole bunch of theological baggage. And I have to wonder, well, why did I spend the time here? Because, folks, it's been a growing problem. In fact, all the Christian universities are moving towards theistic evolution. Even seminaries are moving to that. And so it is worth addressing. And that's why I wanted to take that time to talk about that, to be aware of that. Now, you ask today, why would we have this problem today? Well, one reason. There it is. You made it, right? That was the slide I was waiting for, okay? The last section I want to talk about here is, I didn't say it right. I should pay attention up here a little better. All right, evolution creationists, they don't value Scripture enough and they don't value science enough, okay? But why do we have this problem? And it's that 98%, okay? There, I made it. That's the one you were waiting for. Some of you are like, I can't wait till he gets to that one. We'll be done here soon. Yes, three last slides. Let me take some time on this one, okay? I know you've been a great audience. You've been doing well. I want to take time on this because there are people that need to hear this. And this is one that hung me up for quite a while, too. I was real hung up by this until I really studied it. And I really delved deep into this topic, okay? Well, for starters, do you remember how I said multiple competing hypotheses? We have this. This is how our multiple competing hypotheses look. Guess what theirs look like? I bet you can all guess, right? It looks like that. And guess what? Oh, there's abundant evidence for evolution. And it's overwhelming. I've heard them say overwhelming evidence for evolution. You have to go to my website. I have an article on overwhelming evidence for evolution. Yeah, well, it makes sense. There it is. Okay, that really is. I'm saying, and I'm not just saying my opinion. I have actually I've watched quotes, I've watched things being said. They really they don't even consider it, okay? There's a couple other observations I found. One is the hostility towards creation and intelligent design, and it's very well documented. In the scientific community, there really is a lot of hostility. I have books, volumes, a movie that's written, a website about this. Heartbreaking stuff, At a minimum, people getting ridiculed. some missing promotions, some losing their funding, some losing their job. It really is happening, folks. You kind of wonder, well, why is it happening? One thing that's interesting is that within the scientific community, 80% don't believe in God. I mean, and actually non-Christian, not just don't believe, but actually non-Christian, okay, atheists and agnostics. That is way different than society. That number does not match the society, the numbers that we see in society. Here's another interesting one. Follow the money. Historical science funding comes from government grants, okay? Now, when I thought about this in the past, I said, well, I know that that's true, but I don't want to throw that out because it sounds like you're just talking about, making excuses. But the more I've researched this, I've actually heard them make quotes. We're worried about our funding, okay? I think that is what's made the hostility. The fact that their worldview is being, is in conflict by creationists, okay? The darkness does not like the light, okay? But what's interesting is that 50% of Americans, of people, don't believe evolution. So what we're really seeing perhaps is a career filter. A career filter. This is a causality issue. Everybody, if you know the difference between causality and correlation. Yes, there's a correlation between 98% believing it. Is that because evolution is true? Or maybe there's another reason. People decide, I'm going to go pick a different career field. Because as you're going through school, you're taught you can't, God is not a part of the classroom, the scientific lab. And as you get into graduate school, the pressure gets strong. People say, I'm going to go pick another career field. And oh, guess what? Who's left? The 98% of scientists? And actually probably a few less of those, but once they've gotten that to the point, it has gotten to a point where they then silence a lot of people, and that's what you end up with. I just want to summarize with this. 98%. You know what? We don't know what the real number is, okay? We don't. There's so much hostility in this career field. There's so many people not coming in this career field. That's the first thing I would tell people. People that quote me, well, did you know 98? No, it's not 98. We don't know what the number is. So don't quote me that number if we don't know what it is. Also, there's practical reasons. They don't evaluate it. Also, let me give you one good reason why not to. Remember abiogenesis? It's ridiculous. But they believe it. That there just disqualifies them to me. I'm sorry. If you believe in abiogenesis, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to use you as a source of information for me. All right? There's plenty of biblical reasons. I'm sure you could think of these. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Wide is the road that leads to destruction, and many will find it. People gather around them. Great numbers of teachers would tell them what their itching ears want to hear. There's a lot of biblical reasons that I say, yeah, it makes sense that there's that many. The bottom line is, who am I going to go to help me answer this question? Who would I say is a credible source? They're not a credible source. So for those of you that are hung up on 98%, okay, no, don't use that as your reason for believing in evolution. So I shared this before. This is your bottom line of this is the reason. This is what happens. If you focus on Scripture, science, and supplication, it really will lead you to biblical creation. All right? A more intellectually satisfying worldview. If you're not a biblical creationist, you are settling for an inferior worldview. All right? So, I got one question, one that I seeded a person to ask. Hey, come on, I needed to test my question answer thing here. Nobody got on here, all right? All right, look, next week, could you do me a favor when I talk, get on there and ask some questions, okay? Bam. The one question I told her, that way I would actually have a question. The one first question was, can you remind people to go out and vote Tuesday? Thank you for the question. I'm going to mark it as answered there. Quote, no questions. I did that good. Well, good. All right. We do have some time, so if you don't, actually, I hid some slides if you want a little bit more. We could go a little bit further, but Let me tell you something. Since I do have just a little bit more time and you still seem a little bit attentive, I saved one that I know probably some of you have, and that would be, what about fossils? Can you handle one more slide? Because that was a big one that I thought people would have. Okay, what about fossils? Definitely, that's a big question, okay? Because we know in the fossil record, they say, look, there seems to be a progression. And I'll say that here. Let me switch here. There does seem to be a progression within the fossil record. We've got single-celled organisms, and then we've got ocean creatures, and then we have amphibians and reptiles mixed with mammals, and larger mammals at the top. And so it does. And remember how we said we need to evaluate all data that comes in? Well, fossils are one of them that we need to evaluate. Well, our narrative, that's a narrative. Our narrative is it's the order of burial during the flood, the global flood. We saw there's things in the dirt already, okay? Next, ocean creatures get buried. Then coastal regions, maybe the amphibians and the reptiles. And then last, larger mammals, perhaps further inland. And so yes, we can kind of explain some of that through the biblical flood. It gives us our answer, okay? But there are some other things here, okay? So my point there is that we consider that the order of burial. But what's really cool is that the flood does have a better explanatory power, one of those words you learned today, for everything else, including stasis. Okay, what stasis means is doesn't change. Things staying the same. And when we look at the fossil record, we'll pick a type of organism. And as we look throughout the fossil record, the burial, they stay the same. That creature right there. And then maybe there's a jump to something else, but if we look at that, they stay the same. Stasis. Every paleontologist will admit, yes, there's a lot of stasis in the fossil record, okay? But not only that, here's what's interesting is sudden appearance. The very first one looks like the last one, and it was like it was suddenly there. That doesn't, in evolution, there has to be this gradual. But so many times is sudden appearance, all right? And we call gaps too, like explosions, like all of a sudden there's this kind of creature, and then all of a sudden there's this life form, all right? Gaps is a real big problem, and they're familiar with that problem. The other thing is just how they were buried, okay? You gotta come next week, because we're gonna talk a little bit more about this. But catastrophic, when we look at these fossils are buried in a catastrophic environment. It wasn't just slow and gradual. Here's one, and one got buried over here. We're looking at this going, you got a bunch of stuff that were buried in a flood or something similar, some catastrophic event. Well, that's interesting. That's how all of the vast majority, if you're going to say we know what happened, well, we know this is a flood, others we may not know, that's a big one. And here's what's a big kicker. Ocean life buried with animal life, terrestrial life. A lot of times, they're mixed together, all right? They're mixed together oftentimes. It's a real story of flood, and all over the planet. And also on every mountain range, we found ocean fossils on top of every mountain. On top of Mount Everest, they found a fossil of of a shell. They're all over the place. Okay, so yes, fossils seem like a challenge, but I'm going to say this. This is my personal opinion. If I was an evolutionist, I would be embarrassed by the fossil record because it really does have challenges and problems in there. And as creationists, we say, if we look at explanatory power, we have better explanatory power for the fossil record. It really is. So that was your bonus. All right. All right. Let me just offer it up, though, to questions. If anybody has, we can finish off with a few, and then let you go. Does anybody have any general questions here willing to throw out? Be brave. Yes? This might be kind of random, but so were the dinosaurs in the flood? Dinosaurs. You have to wait till next week. Topsoil. I will throw in a part about topsoil for you. Yes, that is an interesting one. Yes? Global warming. Well, scientists say that global warming is or is not going on. We don't totally know on that one, global warming. And you know what? We gathered the data, but that's one that would take a long time to really try to answer. You know, and it does show you that science, thank you for that, because science is not easy. We're trying to say what happened millions of years, but we know that those deep sea vents, well, we got a picture of it, is where early life began millions of years ago. We can't even answer whether global warming is occurring today. So that was actually a very, very good question there. Yes?
Does the shape of the Earth have anything to do with global warming as it goes day by day?
Does the shape of the Earth, it's mostly round but not completely round. Right. It's very small because of its rotation. Yes. We don't think that has enough of an impact. We think that's small and negligible. So, yes. Any other genetic drift? Can you explain genetic drift? And how about there's like you don't even know what questions to ask. I know some of you may be thinking there's a lot. Well, what's that? The flood, yes. We're going to talk next week a lot about the flood, okay? Did it cover the mountains? Yes, it covered actually before the flood. The Everest did not occur before the mountain. I'm going to get into my next week, but I'll go ahead and give you this. Mount Everest wasn't there before the flood. We don't have to worry about how did it cover Mount Everest. Before the flood, we don't know what it looked like, but it was probably a lower land back then. After the flood is when the mountains came about, and we're going to really get into that. I think if you ask me too many, I'm going to start getting into my next week's question. Yes? How old is the Earth? Oh my gosh, that's the whole talk. Now, thank you. Everybody, come back next week. We're going to find out. Do I have a slide on that? Yes. So let's do this. Let's finish it up. I'll stay up here if some of you do have more questions that you really would like to get into. But we are going to talk next week about the age of the earth because that is a very big topic. It really helps us understand the first 11 chapters of Genesis. Can we really take these at face value? So yes, next week come back. So you weren't privy to this this week because we thought let's not tell them. We don't know who shows up. Okay, but now you've been warned. Okay, that next week we're going to talk about the age of the earth. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. All right, we'll let you go. There you go. Okay.
I'm on. There I am. That was good. I appreciate it. Y'all give Jeff one more hand. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, real quick before I let you guys go back to that prism. I don't know if y'all have ever caught this. I've seen this before, but John 1:4. Pull that up real quick. Let me show you something really interesting. Don't know if you've ever caught it when you see a prism, but now you're going to see a prism totally different than what you've ever seen a prism. I'm going to give you, now we were talking about how everything points to Christ. Christ literally is the center of everything. So I'm going to show you, in him was life, and the life was the
light
of man. So you got a light that goes into a prism. What's a prism in the shape of? Which has how many sides? How many? 3. You got the Father, you got the Son, you got the Spirit that comprise one. It's one, okay, but you got 3. And in him was life, and the life was the light. Okay, the rainbow we know is a foreshadowing of Christ, the promise that would come that would save us from judgment. Okay, each color of the rainbow has a different representation of Christ. Each color has a different meaning, and we can go over those at a different time. I'll go over those in a different day. We'll do that, but each one of these things, each one of these colors, what happened with him is he came, and when he came, the life shined through him, and it broke up into where we could see all of these different parts of who he's always been that previously was hidden until Christ came. Attributes of God that we had never seen were able to be seen and witnessed through Christ that previously were once hidden. Now, what's also beautiful is that same light is shining through us. Okay? It's really awesome, isn't it? It's cool. But everything really does point to Jesus. Everything does. And so this does, and Jeff, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I went, wow, that's really interesting because,
That is
yeah, you
good.
can see it. I mean, if you can see the light, because he is the light coming in, and then all of a sudden it just branches out. It's just a really beautiful thing. So, Jeff, thank you again, man. We appreciate you. We love you. Please come back next week. I know we do have, again, we've got this sickness thing. We've got to, Lord Jesus, we just rebuke all this sickness. I got a message this morning from Margaret. I know she was struggling. And I know we got some people traveling. But a few people actually went to Gatlinburg this week. Brother Gill, actually, and them, and Gene, I think, and then went at the same time. I don't know if they saw each other when they were up there, but they went and suffering for the Lord, eating pancakes and suffering. So, yeah. But we love you guys. Thank you so much. Jeff, thank you again, buddy. God bless you guys.